We have to address the root causes of gun violence and get much tougher with criminals who often laugh at things, literally laugh at things like bail and sentencing practices.
What on earth is happening to Toronto? That is the question many Torontonians, people all across the province, people all across the country are asking after a 14-year-old boy was brazenly abducted in broad daylight on his way to school one morning. This happening on Thursday morning. As the day unfolded, though, more information coming out, provoking even more questions. The boy was apparently abducted as collateral in a $4 million drug deal gone bad involving one of his family members. Thankfully, later on that evening, the boy was found. He was released, but police are still searching for the abductors. This is not the sort of thing we're used to seeing in Canadian cities. Many observers have noted this is something we're used to seeing in places like Chicago or LA, where it seems like the gangs rule the roost. But hold on a second, I say. If you take a look at some recent events and the latest political environment when it comes to policing or depolicing, more on that in a moment, maybe the question, the sad question that should be asked is, well, maybe we're lucky these things aren't happening more often. Let's go back to 2016, a story my colleague Joe Warmington wrote. Kensington Market, trendy downtown area in Toronto. Teens armed with guns, brazenly going into coffee shops and robbing people at gunpoint. Did they flee the scene? No, they didn't. They stuck around to loiter around the neighborhood. Cops show up, say, let's get those guys. Do the kids flee? No, they don't. They taunt the cops, they hurl insults at them, and they say, hey, cops, maybe you didn't hear, but you don't run these streets anymore, and you're not allowed to touch us. What were they referring to? Who knows? Maybe it was the repealing of carding. Maybe it was the narrative that was becoming increasingly common that hands off, the cops just shouldn't be doing anything anymore. And boy, do we continue to hear that narrative from many different political and activist corners. The summer of 2018 saw a very sad spectacle. Gunmen opened fire in a playground, wounding two young girls, sending them to hospital. Toronto Mayor John Tory, in one of his finer moments, got up to the podium and he was angry. He wasn't going to let something like this stand, and he was unleashing. He called them profoundly antisocial sewer rats. I prefer scumbags, but whatever. I think he still hit the nail on the head. He was attacked for saying that. Activists were more upset at John Tory for saying that than they were for the fact this event unfolded in the first place. Where are their priorities? Now, John Tory, he refused to apologize for all of this. Good for him, but we haven't heard much strong language from him since then when it comes to dealing with some of the scum who feel like they rule these streets. In fact, what we have heard is messages from Toronto's political class condemning police and law enforcement officials for doing their jobs. Meanwhile, they remain relatively silent about the increased gun violence that they're seeing in relatively new corners of the city that aren't even used to seeing this sort of stuff. Big example, big case in point. There's a video that went viral of a rather rough fare enforcement encounter. Someone who hadn't really paid his fare, I guess. It wasn't really clear what was going on in the video, but Toronto Transit Commission law enforcement, they were dealing with the person and they were being a little rough with the individual. But no context, so probably no reason for politicians to judge. Oh, but they did. A number of Toronto politicians weighing in, denouncing these individuals, not the fare evaders. Broken windows matter, you know. If you let that stuff slip, who knows what they're going to do next? No, they denounced these officers for doing their job. That is the climate that we're living in right now. Sue Ann Levy writing a feature of Sue Fisher, who is a 32-year veteran of the force. She's glad to be retired now because she says the political climate is just too much. It's strangling cops all across the city who feel like they cannot do their jobs, at least not without fear of being criticized, denied promotion, penalized, what have you, criticized in the press and by the public for doing policing 101. Enough is enough. It's time to end the depolicing. It's time for politicians to stop being tougher on the cops than they are on the criminals. It's time to stop letting the activists determine all of the rules and frame the narrative. It's time to go back to letting the police do their job. What do you think? Leave your comments and don't forget to like and share this video.